Welcome to the Tech Savvy Professor podcast, which features two faculty members who love tech and love making it part of their work. I'm Marty Gensius, a program coordinator at Kent State University.
And I'm Eric Perry, program director and associate faculty at Divine Mercy University.
So just to check in, Eric, it's been what I do. I slept through the last showtime and didn't. So it's been a while, and some of it's on me. And I think there's one time you had an emergency come up, and so it's been a while since we've done a show. But I'm curious, anything new with you, tech-wise or life-wise, that you care to share?
Not a lot. I mean, getting ready to travel again. So doing our annual bass fishing trip to Canada. So I plan on. Yeah, we'll probably miss another one here in a few weeks. We leave on the 20th, I think.
Yeah.
But other than that, just kind of the normal summer stuff. The kids are home and, want to be out doing things. So we've been doing a lot of running and spending time in the sun as, Pennsylvania weather will allow.
Yeah. Yeah. I have been it might have been I'd say even the last week since I produced some shows on Mac Apple stuff. The Worldwide Developers Conference started this last Monday, and all the announcements started coming out through the keynote of the changes in the software platform for Mac. Mm-hmm. Basically, liquid glass is one thing, but the other parts that are really interesting for me, there was a big commitment to Vision Pro, and I do a podcast called Vision Profiles. And so there was a lot of new information for that show. And also, they didn't shy away from the fact that Apple Intelligence has been a problem over the year. Mm-hmm. And instead, they started out the keynote saying, we know Apple Intelligence is not where it should be. We're working on it. We're trying to get it up to and you'll see improvements over the year. And then they proceeded to announce a bunch of little things that they're doing with the software that it is really context-related AI within the software. So I think the place they're trying to plant their flag is we have strong feelings about security and privacy. Mm-hmm. And whereas other attempts at using AI on other platforms, you're putting your stuff out there, we're going to focus on the use of AI on devices using the context of information that's on your device, getting it to give you what you want without going out or sending it out someplace else, at least without your permission. So all the little changes that you see with the software, that now it can do this and now it can do that, if you're thinking in the background, AI is running to do this, and it's all done on device. So I was pretty impressed with it from an AI. I'm going to be speaking on Apple Intelligence in mid-July at MacStock, and I've been terrified up to this point because I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I think I've got a little bit more footing on what to do with it. But I have been knee-deep in this for the last 10 days, various shows that I'm on as a guest, and then the shows that I produce. The fun time that I had was on the British Tech Network with the Mac Show, which is on Friday mornings. Last week, we did an episode that was Keynote Poker, and we all had to put out what we thought a prediction would be for the keynote, which was this last Monday, and everybody bet on the likelihood of that happening. So I think I did pretty good in Keynote Poker. I think I hedged my bets with other people's suggestions. It was like, yeah, I could go in all in on this, but if it doesn't happen, then I lose a lot. So I went in partial, or I went neutral, or in a couple of cases I said, no, this is not going to happen at all. So
Mhm.
I don't know what the point spreads are. I'll find out that tomorrow when we do another Mac show with the British Tech Network. This week is also for me exam week um, and midterms. So I've sat and watched students take midterms all week long
Ew.
for the three courses that I'm taking, teaching. Except one. Except one was all online. We'll talk about the method that I think we both came up with this method to do. But so the question, and we'll start with you. How do you administer tests, and what's your grading process?
Yeah, so this has been a huge conversation across online education for a little while. And particularly now with AI, evaluating students on their performance using tests and quizzes online is difficult. If you think about some of the exams that are out there, like for national exams, like your NCE, for example, your National Counselor Examination, those are conducted online, but you have to go through a whole process. There's somebody watching you. You have to like move your camera around the room and ensure that you're not cheating. So we've kind of moved away from evaluating whether or not someone is meeting their course outcomes or learning outcomes with kind of multiple choice tests, and moved more toward long answer papers and demonstrations, and even starting to look at, okay, now maybe we need to do more kind of oral exams, things that are going to allow us to capture better whether or not a student has met a learning objective or not. We still have them, but the purpose for those quizzes and tests isn't to gather knowledge. It's more preparatory for them to have to examine the content, um, kind of acclimate to it. So we use them a lot more at the beginning of the courses than we do toward
Mhm.
the end of the course. So online is a little bit different, and definitely have some tools that I use for that too. But I know your experience is a little bit different. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit first.
No, continue on with the tools. I think we're both going to converge around Classmarker as a tool, and I have a page put up for Classmarker for people who would be watching the video, and then I have a page put up of the test that I gave this week, so you can see what it looks like, at least the way I laid it out for the
Mhm.
exam. So tell us more about things like you're using an LMS platform. You're using Canvas. I'm using Canvas as
Mhm.
LMS. So we have a similar platform that way. And then a little bit about rubrics and things with rubrics that you find interesting.
Yeah, so I found we use a lot of similar verbiage within our rubrics intentionally, right? That we want it to align with our learning outcomes, um, and what our expectations are for certain types of assignments. Students almost get acculturated to the rubrics that they use and knowing how they're going to be evaluated. So, using AI has definitely shortened that process. So
Mhm.
using tools like ChatGPT to help kind of outline what a rubric might look like. The thing we always have to be careful of is I can't put specific content in there I plan to use in the course, right? Um, so I tend to be pretty careful about that, but I've used it to help come up with language and evaluative language within the rubrics that are going to be helpful. Thinking about how we distribute points across domains for different things that we're looking for. How heavily do or should we weight things? I think it can be helpful in kind of parsing some of that out.
Mhm.
Um, so I like Chat GPT for that. It's probably what I've used that for the most in terms of course development is the rubric part of things. Um,
Can
so
I
yeah, I definitely
can
do a lot of that.
I want to weigh in on rubrics for a little bit because I don't like to use them.
Mhm.
And I know that kind of goes against the trend that you're supposed to be, transparent and explain to students
Mhm.
how things are going to be graded. My issue with them is then you've got 20 students and you get all 20 of the same projects that, and so if I'm doing something like a project development piece or something like that, and I have a rubric for it, then I'm going to see the same thing across projects. And I think it limits students' ability to be creative because they are writing for the rubric. They're not creating for the essence of what the project is. So, I have the luxury of not having to use them in the courses that I teach. I have some I have project based and I have exam based kinds of assignments in my courses. And the project based, I put together what I think are good instructions for the project, and my concern is not developing point differences between students to say, oh, this is only worth 2 points, whereas this student is worth 3 points. It's sort of the spirit of the project that if they
Mhm.
approach it from that, then at least for that part of the class, they'll get the complete points for it. I'll give them feedback, I'll give them direction, I'll tell them what would improve it. But generally, if we're going to get into the points game in my courses, it's around the exams where it gets a little bit more specific and is content based. I do have some links, and we do have some links about rubric. I would agree with you. There are some links on sort of services on the web. Uh, how to create a rubric with ChatGPT. Quick Rubric is another site here where you can put things in and get a rubric description of that. And then even ChatGPT has its own rubric generator. And you put in what you want and what grade level it's for, and then it will generate whatever rubric you want. So, those are available. I've used ChatGPT extensively for things like strategic planning and for bylaws considerations and changes in wording. But that same sort of constructive piece can work well with rubrics. Um, you said something that I wanted to go, what? A concern about using ChatGPT for putting in content for the rubric?
Mhm.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
is
I
that?
mean, what I don't want to do is kind of copy paste what I have and say, "Hey, fix this." And maybe
Okay.
that's my own paranoia. Just like I don't want it kind of publicly out there. I don't want it to eat what I have, essentially. I will have it generate things for me that I might use in the development of the rubric um, on my own side, but what I feed it is what I watch. And
Yeah,
again, that's paranoia.
I there are ways to set ChatGPT, particularly the paid version of ChatGPT, to not use your content for modeling, which means the best interpretation I can give that is it's not out there. It
Mhm.
is it's being it's ChatGPT is consuming other stuff in order to help you with yours, but it's not putting yours out there for that purpose. So yeah, I have used it a lot in development, and if I had to do a rubric, I would probably use ChatGPT for that purpose in creating it.
And I like a good rubric. I think it creates some fairness when done well in terms of how we evaluate students. And if you have someone, 4 or 5 sections of something running, there's some alignment between what you're evaluating a student on a different course on. There's still the IRR concerns, your
Mm-hmm.
inter-rater reliability concerns. Um, but, I think you're right in that you do see some restrictions that kind of box in students in certain parts of the assignment. They're really worried about meeting those rubrics. Where I get hung up is we're going to put this at 500 to 750 words, right? Like we're going to limit what the student's going to do when, then they're just looking at to meet those rubric requirements. They're not looking at what might make this project better.
Yeah.
What creative elements can they add to it? So I like to remove that kind of thing. and think about rubrics in terms of how I evaluate the overall work.
Yeah, I do in one of the classes I teach is group work, and one of the things I have built into that class is a group plan or project. And I have an outline for it saying these are the components that need to go into it. And I should see some evidence of this. So, who's the group for? How many people are going to be in it? How often does it run? Why are you making those decisions? And is there any research attached to it that you can do? So students then have to go out, get research, and say, yeah, this kind of stuff says what I'm planning here is important. The way I sell it is I don't want it to look like an APA 7th edition style paper because what I want it to look like is a manual that anybody can pick up that you can take to your internship site and say, hey, I've got this idea for a group. So find out, discover what your passion is and then develop a group around it. Here's my only constraints. It needs to kind of cover, you need to respond to these topics. And if you do that and it's complete, you get if it turns out to be a bullet list that you've done the night before, yeah, I'm going to probably take points away from you.
Right.
But if you are able to complete the task in a meaningful way and it meets the spirit of the assignment, then you'll get full credit. And and there is a purpose for this. It isn't going to be an assignment just for this class, but it's a project that you can take and maybe use at your internship site or maybe use wherever you wind up working as the beginning of a structure for a group that you'd want to run there. So I try to make those real practical, and in the process, I haven't done a rubric for it, and I haven't constrained people to using APA 7th edition because nobody reads that in the real world. And particularly if you're developing a manual or some sort of training or a guidebook that somebody else could pick up and use. So, yeah, I focus more on the output of the project than actually fitting into a rubric that is necessary for me.
Well, and I have this fight pretty consistently when we're looking at redeveloping courses. Something here needs to be unacademic, right? By that, like something needs to connect to the job you're actually going to be doing. Graduate school is not undergraduate; it's different. The whole objective here is to train you for the job and have you do things that you would do as a part of your work as a clinician. So, like our assessment class, when we develop that, um, one thing they leave with is a list of assessments they can potentially use with a particular population they want to work with. They still have to look at the research, they still have to evaluate reliability and validity, look at norming and statistics. But that guide they create at the end for themselves, which is just essentially a listing, I've had people turn in as spreadsheets, as
Mm-hmm.
PowerPoints, annotated APA bibliographies if that's what they want. But like it needs to be useful for them. That's the
Yeah.
whole purpose of the assignment. They're showing knowledge there, but it gets them closer to something they might actually do if they evaluated an assessment they want to use with clients. So, this is a whole nother a whole nother argument. I have a whole hour long speech on this if you want, um, but I digress.
Okay, well, we can pick it up and we can pick the concept up in another show.
Yeah.
You put down some things that are sort of fun things that you would use or you have used, and I'm familiar with some of these tools, but I'm curious why you put some of these down. So why don't you talk about the fun stuff?
Okay. I can almost hear the booing before I say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. I love Kahoot. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a great way to um, really engage your class in doing something that's can even be competitive in terms of learning. If there's content that you really want them to know, and I've done a couple around problem areas that we've had with CPCE exams, content area exams that students struggle with research and assessment. it can be a lot of fun. They can play against each other. You can play synchronously or asynchronously. Um, you essentially join by a mobile phone, any device really, um, and you answer questions, and you're awarded different points based on. And there's different game types, but the primary game type is you're awarded points based on how fast you respond and if you respond accurately. So I think it's a great study tool. I don't know that it necessarily is great as an evaluative tool, but I think it's a lot of fun if we're talking about the outcome here being learning the content. Um, my K
Okay.
12 folks love it too, so it's a great tool. I think you can use, and it's cheap, right? You can get
Okay.
a
So
free
I'm
account.
I'm gonna call an audible on this and throw
Okay,
one in myself. And I don't know if you've had much opportunity to use this, but Quizlet.
Quizlet,
Uh,
yeah.
Quizlet is remarkable in terms of, and I haven't used it for studying, although you can get whole study guides or import basically flashcards.
Hmm.
It's a flashcard program, and you can import content areas that people have already produced and have already shared, and it works as a good study guide. I think they even have ones for the NCE in there,
Yeah. Hmm.
and for that purpose alone, it can be very valuable. Well, I haven't been in school in years, but if I was then, I would be using Quizlet. What I use it for is when I was doing grants and we were inviting international teachers together. Before they got here, I would put together a set of Quizlet cards that they could study that has the picture, the name, and the country of their colleagues that are coming. So before they even got here, they would kind of know names and faces and
Hmm.
potentially countries. In fact, some of them would, because connecting flights coming to the US from different countries run through some main airports, both east and west. They would run into each other in airports before they got here and go, "I know you," um,
I've seen you
because
before.
they had already done the Quizlet with face and face recognition kind of thing. That's helpful. I can imagine this would be great for me to try and learn names of students, but you've got that protected sort of status that students say, please send me a picture of you. Yeah, right, Dr. Gensius, not going to do that. Um, and the university pictures that they have that they take are so tiny, and
Mhm.
they don't look anything like that by the time they show up in my class. So Quizlet is another good link that you might want to look at and play with. Other things that you've got before we get to the one that we both are together on.
Yeah, I put in ProProfs. If anybody's ever used this, there's a quiz maker and ProProfs. It is a like kind of a paid site. Um, yep, there it is. But they also have like a host of other quizzes that you can use. Some of this is really focused on K 12, but what I've heard from people, I haven't actually been able to use this one myself, but it was recommended to me, is that the quiz maker that's a part of ProProfs is really, really easy to use.
Hmm.
Um, it's graphically appealing, it's engaging, and it's good for adult learners as well. Um, so it's a nice tool or resource that was recommended to me. I just haven't had a chance to try it out yet.
Yeah, like I really want to try out Does He Like Me quiz.
Right?
Decode
Yeah.
His True Feelings. That's one of
Uh-huh.
my favorite. And what will I look like when I'm older? Well, I am older. This is what I look like. Does he like
Even
me back?
older.
Yeah. Does he like me back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So people are having fun with this.
Yeah.
With it besides that. And then there's trivia options on here. The extremely hard Harry Potter trivia. Let me tell you, anything Harry Potter would be extremely hard for me. Um, my kids got into that. I think I went to one movie with them and then gave up on the rest, although my kids have seen them all. Um, And there are some adults I know that are still very much Potter fans. So, uh, and they make all these references, and I'm like, huh? Um, so yeah, ProProfs quizzes. And again, we'll have these links in the show notes, both of the video on YouTube and also the audio on your podcast servers. It'll be in the notes for that. Okay, let's go to the big one.
Right? Classmarker.
Classmarker. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how this made your list.
So Classmarker was another one that was recommended. I actually had them give me a demo
Oh,
um, a little while back because we were thinking about paying for it. And I'm sad that we didn't because there's tons and tons of useful development resources here. They also have APIs, I think, for all the major LMS systems, so you can build things here and bring it into your courses a lot easier. Um, so I haven't actually used it, but would really like to. So I don't know, Marty, if you can give us some details on what your experience has been.
well, I started using it back at COVID because I don't know if we were using WebCT or we were using Blackboard, whatever, one of the variations of Blackboard. They didn't do much to change it, and the changes that they made it worse.
Hmm.
And but I think I tried one exam on the LMS. The LMS was set up to do quizzes, and it was so tedious to do. And
Hmm.
then when we switched to having to be an online program with online content during COVID until we could return back to campus, I started searching for an alternative and went with Classmarker, and I pay for it myself. I think it's $16 a month or something like that. And I haven't, although I have less use for it now, I haven't dropped my account. Um, and I haven't dropped the account because I occasionally have times where I need to do something and administer it online. And that was a situation this last week with advanced multicultural counseling. So I can go into that and show you the exam, or at least how I put it together. Um, and I'll go back and show you the ones that I have done. But here is the advanced multicultural counseling exam. I had basically, when I taught the course, this up to the midterm here, as I taught it, we had 3 weeks and we had three major content areas. In those content areas, there were five or six literature articles that we had posted. And I wanted students to read all of the articles of the five or so articles for each week, and particularly wanted them to discuss on a discussion board some aspect of the article that they read and give feedback to other folks. So, how do I do an exam that evaluates that? Because the course has choice in it, um, in terms of what people chose to write about on the discussion. Assumingly, I could ask them anything about any of the five articles and they should be able to answer that. But I didn't. I switched it a bit, and let me see if I can zoom in on this. Um, what I did was have 6 questions. So, 2 questions per class session. The first question says, I'm giving you 3 choices here. Pick one of them and write about them and answer these questions. And there is the content box that you can respond in. I also made it available for people to write on something else and copy and paste in. And then the second question for each night was an integrated question that required you to use multiple articles from that set. So I did that for the 3 weeks that we have met. And for the content on both of them, and then again with the option of choice, which I think the students really enjoyed in terms of responding to questions with it. During COVID, other faculty were having trouble trying to figure out how to administer stuff online, and I suggested Classmarker. And I know at least two other faculty who, during that time, purchased an account so they could deliver their exams via Classmarker. Now, let me see if I can get into. Uh, Let me see if I can get into some other exams, or at least show you some of the home. Let me go into the home page. So yeah, here is some of the tests that I've created in the past for different courses. You'll have situations where students can't make the exam at the specified time because of some conflict with this. Often there's another, because it's an online course. There's another course it meets at terrestrially that they have to go to campus for at the same time that I'm administering the test, or have chosen. So you can make options for individual students to be able to take the test at a different specified time. You also have some students that have accommodations in terms of a lengthier time to be able to take exams. And so I'm able to create versions of the exam that has different hours or different times to complete the exam. So yeah, this is a pool of all of those that I've done for different exams. You can have question banks that will have all of the questions in them. So, and organized in whatever way you want. Historic contexts of psychopathology, drugs therapeutic index, some questions about therapeutic index. And you can tag those and have them in different categories if you wish. And you can get statistics out of it in terms of scores. You can set up scoring to do automatic scoring on exams if you have put together response sets that will, with multiple choice, it's very easy. But if there are other kinds of exams that you want to do, you have to put together response sets for each of the questions. And it can evaluate in terms of the student's response set with regard to it and give you some idea in terms of point values that they might get from it. So it is a very cool tool.
The API is a big deal for people who are considering, who might want to use this as something you could integrate into your LMS, do your development here. They're all clunky. So Canvas, Brightspace, they're all real, Blackboard, they're all real clunky in terms of developing your own questions, quizzes there. And there's other things that it does. So I wanted to use it for our supervisor training and assessments, so that it would generate a certificate when they were done to say, okay, you've completed our supervisory training for our site supervisors. So there's other things that it does, including surveys, certificates, that can help manage some of that process too.
And it will put in costs. So if you want to charge somebody for the administration of it, it's available to do that, where people pay for access to take the certification or whatever you're putting together for them. So it's a much larger platform that way. I found students respond pretty well to it. I don't attach it to my LMS. I use the LMS to send out a link to students, and the link's set up like with the psychopath or with the advanced multicultural exam last night. I gave them probably more time than they needed. Um, you can set a time range, and I said 5:30 to 8:30, so I gave them 3 hours to complete that, which meant a half hour per question if they wanted to take it. Most folks came in after, and I told them, you're not going to need it, but this is the first time I've done this with this form. Well, it's not the first time I've done this with this format, but I want to give you enough time based on the readings that you chose to respond to it. I also gave them some guidance to say, you know, you probably only need two very good, well written paragraphs to respond to these questions. So you don't feel like you have to write forever. It's not going to help you. But if you are succinct and you can get the content in, you can probably do this in two rather lengthy, well-written paragraphs instead of feeling like you have to go on for four or five or six. So some guidance around that, but I sent the link out, and it meant that anybody who had the link in our group could go in and initiate the exam at the time that the link starts. So if I said 5:30, it won't let you in at 5:29. It'll wait till 5:30 before you can get in on it. Now, what I've also discovered is if you have a 2 hour clock and you started at, and it's say it's 5:30 to 7:30, you started at 6 o'clock, you still have a 2 hour clock. So the time range they put in is based on when you should start the exam. And once you start the exam, you have the total time that's allotted for it. So it's not like you have to get it in exactly between 5:30 and 7:30, but you have to start it sometime in that range, and then you get the full amount for the clock. You can put settings on it like what happens if the internet goes out. Well, you can have it set so they can reopen it twice if they need to. So there's all sorts of good protective stuff. I never kind of used that, and then I ran into students who ran into that problem and were emailing me or messaging me and saying the thing dropped out. I need to get back in, and so I had to go back and set their particular exam to allow them to come back in and start the process over. So
Yeah,
there's
and I
just
mean
a
our internet is reliable, but I've had it happen a few times mid class. The
yeah.
internet just drops off. It happens.
And you're working in a semi, I mean, if you're working in a semi rural area where you have students coming from rural parts of the state, their internet is not necessarily as effective or as efficient. We kind of, at Kent State, we kind of draw from a surrounding area that pretty much is pretty good in terms of where students live, in terms of pretty good access. Of course, not all of them have high speed. Not all of them have high bandwidth. But generally, they can get through these kinds of exams pretty well. So that is Classmarker. If you're considering doing exam now, of all that I teach at this point, everything I teach in a room. I print out the exams, they write the exams, they hand in the exams, and I've got a stack of them behind me out of sight for three classes that I have to grade uh, by Monday. So the next couple of days will be absolutely no fun for me grading exams, but that's what they pay us for. They pay us not just for the joy, but also for the torture. Um,
Right? You get both.
and I can't turn them loose. If I had a graduate assistant, I never really turn them loose to GAs to do the grading, because if there is a complaint about the outcome, then I pulled a third party in, and so I do all my grading myself. Now, if someone wants to learn grading, I'll sit down with them and show them how I do and why I do what I do. And sometimes I'll make copies of a few of the exams, have them grade it, and then I grade it, and then we talk about the process. But ultimately, I'm responsible for that grade. And I don't want the GA to get pulled into a dispute or disagreement with regard to if somebody has a complaint about their grade.
Right.
So it's kind of protecting them from that stuff. So yeah, old school. Somebody said last night at the exam, now, do we need a pencil? And I was like, no, I want you to do all your answers in performance art. Of course you need something to write. And she goes, well, I thought you'd do a Scantron or something like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
Number two only. Number
Yeah,
two
no,
only.
no.
Yeah.
And so I do have to suffer through some people's writing. And when I hand back the exams for the ones that are really illegible in terms of what students have written, I write illegible responses. So ultimately, if they got something wrong, they'll come up to me at the end of the class and point at it and say, can you tell me what this says? And then I point at their writing and go, can you tell me what this says? It kind of goes both ways. So there are some that I really have to suffer with. And then there are the big writers, the people who make really big letters, and they have to use the back of the page to finish it.
I have to wonder if that's on your Rate My Professor profile. I'm going to have to look it up.
Oh, I don't even look at that. I don't want to know. I have no desire to know that. I don't want it on my gravestone, so I don't even look at it.
Dr. Gensius made fun of my handwriting.
And his really sucks too. So that's all I've got for today. And do you have any other final comments or thoughts about this?
That's it for me. I'm just glad there's other tools out there. Like I said, building in an LMS it's a trial in
Oh,
building your patience. It's
yeah.
just clunky, takes forever. So yeah, use an outside tool, third party tool.
Okay, yeah, and again, I pay for it. It's like I first of all, I don't necessarily want the university to own my exams. Call that paranoid if you like, but I consider that proprietary in terms of what I do. And they might say, well, you're taking our time to write the exam, so we should technically own it. But if it's not on their system, then I can do what I want to do, and they don't have access to it. It's why most of the stuff that I do in terms of online classes, all of my videos and lectures are on my server.
Mm-hmm.
All I have on the site is pointers to it. So that way, someday when I leave the university, I can just shut all those pointers off, and they have a course shell, and that's about it. So, okay, so I am showing my vindictive paranoid side of me now when I say that. Hey, final comments. I think you need to look at this. Sometimes the good stuff you have to pay for, and I just see that as like buying crayons for your class. Sometimes you've got to do that with that. So if you want to know where and what this thing is I'm speaking at this summer, Macstock Conference and Expo, you can look at macstockconferenceandexpo.com. And we'll have a link in the show notes for you to find it. If you're interested in actually going, you can get a $50 discount by using Pod Talk 50. And that's always a good option to get some money saved to seeing it. They also will have a virtual conference, which means 30 days after the conference, they'll take all of the presentations and have them on streamable video at a cheaper rate. So you're going to have to wait 30 days or so to get the stream set up, but you can buy the virtual ticket and get to see all the presentations. I'll be presenting on Apple Intelligence for a workshop for about 90 minutes. And then I'm presenting at the end or near, and that's the first one of this. They put me at first up, as leadoff man, and I have a little anxiety about that, particularly the topic. But they like my style, and I appreciate being able to present there. And then near the end, my son is coming with me, and we do a podcast called Gear Up and Go. And we're going to take audience suggestions on what their favorite travel gear is and have them come up, we'll find it, they'll talk about it for 5 minutes, and then we'll give them a door prize. So I'm purchasing some good, not too expensive, but reasonable travel gear and travel tech that will kind of pepper the audience with to come up and do our talk for us. But it's going to be fun doing a presentation with Will together. And somebody, when they first announced it, they said, "Oh, that's cute. You're bringing your 12-year-old boy and you're going to do a presentation with him." It's like, no, he's a 30-year-old man.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it is kind of techie show and tell, right?
Yeah, it is. So, and Will has just spent 6 weeks living in a casino hotel in Las Vegas. I'm picking him up on Monday, doing stage work. And I don't mean dancing. There is a artist that needs a special stage constructed, and his college buddy does this for a living. And Will was free for the summer, and he's making good coin, and went out there and is doing construction essentially out in the sun. So we'll have a good time at MacStock Conference and Expo. He's learning all the ins and outs of living in a hotel and trying to use technology with hotel Wi-Fi and other things that he needs. You can find out more about this podcast and the other podcasts on the podtalk.net. Look for us on Spotify, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, and all podcast servers. Our bumper music is by Philip Gross, Rast, from the Free Music Archive. Everything you need to know is at thepodtalk.net. Look for other shows like Circular Firing Squad and the new show on spatial computing called Vision Profiles. That's it for this episode. Thanks for subscribing to the Tech Savvy Professor.